and I call the honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, I rise today to speak on the Social Security Amendment Repeal of the Cashless Debit Card and Other Measures Bill 2022. And, Deputy Speaker, it is both an absolute honour and a privilege to be speaking on this bill, because this bill delivers on the Albanese Labor government's election commitment to abolish the cashless debit card. We are very proud to make that commitment and proud now to be abolishing it for all of the devastation it has brought across the country. And in fact, on day one of this new parliament, the Minister for Social Services introduced this bill into the House. And this bill, which is the product of extensive community consultation, will end the cashless debit card and allow approximately 17,300 participants to transition off the card. We also announced last week that, as part of abolishing the scheme, the government will close the cashless debit card program to all new entrants from the 1st of August. So, as of now, as of today, no new people will be forced onto the card. Deputy Speaker, the fact is the cashless debit card is privatised welfare. And there is something deeply, deeply wrong when private, for-profit companies control people's income support payments, or where those companies determine where people can actually spend their money. Now, we know the former government spent $170 million on the cashless debit card program, money which could have been better invested in the support services that local communities need. Now, of course, Deputy Speaker, the cashless debit card had been operating across Australia for 6 years in those trial sites. The former government introduced the card in Ceduna in 2016, but over time it was expanded to the East Kimberley, Goldfields, Bundaberg and Hervey Bay areas, and most recently the Northern Territory and Cape York as well. Now, of course, the concerns that many people raised was that the previous government actually intended to roll it out even further, even much further than that. And it's good to now hear the opposition confirming their plans. They were going to roll the cashless debit card out across the country. And, of course, Labor shared all of those concerns. The fact is the cashless debit card was wrong and destructive. We know the former government wanted to roll it out further, in fact, even to aged pensioners who are very concerned about that. So, Deputy Speaker, the fact is the cashless debit card has been a complete failure and it has destroyed lives. And there has never been evidence to show that the cashless debit card is actually working. There have been so many evaluations, inquiries and audits that have repeatedly shown clear data that the card did not work. It just did not work. And of course, just recently, the Australian National Audit Office released its latest audit on the performance of the cashless debit card, highlighting once more the lack of evidence available to demonstrate any success of the card at all. Now, Deputy Speaker, recently I was in Bundaberg and Hervey Bay and met with many people who were forced onto the card. People like Karen Griffiths, who in fact was then rejoicing after finally being able to get off the card after being forced onto it for an incredibly traumatic 3 years. Now, Karen's a mother of 5 and is one of the thousands of Australians whose spending was restricted as she lived in one of those trial sites. As Karen said, "It has massively negatively impacted mine and my kids' lives. It has been a nightmare being on the card. It's been traumatic. There just isn't a better word." Karen said life without the card meant her family would have their freedom back. "I can't wait," she said. "I'm going to be able to have flexibility with my finances. I'm not going to be restricted by which bill I will and won't pay. And my kids are looking forward to having pocket money again." Deputy Speaker, being forced onto the card meant that those people had 80% of their government payments placed onto the Inju-controlled cashless debit card that could only be used in approved locations for approved purchases and could not be used to withdraw cash. Now, Deputy Speaker, in opposition, we established the Protecting Pensioners Task Force, and as the chair, I was inundated with heartbreaking stories from those people who had already been forced onto the card, people who were cruelly directed by the previous government about where and when they could actually spend their own money. And, Deputy Speaker, I'd like to especially acknowledge today the secretary of that task force, my good friend the member for Bruce, who also worked tirelessly to get rid of this cruel card. And for many months we campaigned on this issue. And Labor committed to abolish the card because of how destructive it had been. And now we are delivering on this. We listened and we're acting. Now, we know that the former government wanted to roll the cashless card out nationally. We heard them say it many, many times. And they wanted to extend the card's operation to many more pensioners, including aged pensioners. Now, Deputy Speaker, our seniors built this nation. They worked hard, paid their taxes and raised their families, and they deserve to be treated with respect, and that's exactly what they get under an Albanese Labor government. They are being treated with respect.
With respect.
Now, Deputy Speaker, many individuals and community groups have worked incredibly hard for years to get rid of this card. And I would like to especially thank groups like the No Cashless Debit Card Australia and the Say No 7 for your tireless work. And I really want to acknowledge Catherine Wilkes and Amanda Smith. Your commitment and hard work is inspirational. Groups like the Say No 7 and No Cashless Debit Card Australia have worked so hard for so long for this to happen. They have been advocating everywhere for years to get rid of this card, and they have been collecting stories and evidence from across the nation. Thanks to both of you. You are wonderful. And thanks so much to the more than 50,000 people across the country who signed our petition to get rid of this card. Now, Deputy Speaker, I have spoken with so many people who have described the impact of being on the card and how it stigmatises them and makes their lives so incredibly difficult. Examples such as usage of the card is actually extremely restricted at the locations that it can be used at. The card is often declined. Many people are not able to buy basic food or groceries. Families often have to leave their groceries at the store. They're not able to buy them. Their card is so often declined. Many families are unable to pay their rent. Many people have been forced into bankruptcy. Many have been unable to make car repayments. And in so many cases, they're not able to buy second-hand clothes or school uniforms because they can't access cash to buy them. So they can't, like a lot of people buy them through Facebook groups by using cash to buy second-hand uniforms. They can't afford to buy them. So this has had a devastating effect on individuals. It is degrading, and this card has stripped away many people's rights and, in many cases, their dignity. And I'd like to highlight again a case I've told the House before, the case of Bianca. Deputy Speaker, Bianca has to wear plus-size bras, size 16H, and she can only afford to buy this specific bra on eBay, which of course is a blocked merchant under this scheme. So what did Inju make Bianca do? They insisted she send photos of the bra, then she had to get permission to do it, then show proof of purchase. She was completely humiliated into buying a bra that she could have bought on eBay and had to go through this really degrading process. Or the case of Jocelyn, who is 65 years old on a disability pension and forced onto the cashless welfare card just because of where she lives. She always manages her own finances. And as Jocelyn says, I don't need anyone else to do it for me or to know what I'm spending my money on. It's hard enough being on a pension without 80% of it being put on a card you can't use everywhere. Speaker, this card is insulting, demeaning. It is downright wrong. Now, pending the passage of this legislation, this bill will enable more than 17,300 existing cashless debit card participants to be transitioned off the card, which we aim to be from September this year. It will also ensure the Families Responsibilities Commission can continue to support community members by placing them on income management where the need exists, or they do want to be on it. I want to make it clear that for participants transitioning off, there is no requirement after this bill passes for a participant to prove anything in order to move off the card. Secondly, every participant will be transitioned off the card once this bill passes the parliament, and the CDC will be abolished. It will no longer exist. Now, of course, where participants require continued assistance with budgeting or transferring direct debits from the cashless debit card or referrals to other support services, there will be help available. We want to ensure we provide that support to people as they transition off the card. We are consulting with them to make sure there's support services for them, unlike the fact when they were placed onto the card, it just happened. Now, also, part of that support is including the option for voluntary income management if people choose. That's what voluntary income management is. They have to choose that. And when it comes to income management, the primary principles around it should be that it's voluntary, that it is not privatised, that it's supported by evidence and it's subject to ongoing evaluation. And we respect the right that some individuals may want to voluntarily be on income management, or some communities might want that. But it is being approached in a very different way from this government as opposed to the former government who forced so many people onto the card. And Deputy Speaker, our government is committed to ensuring communities and individuals are properly supported to transition off the card. And we will continue to keep consulting with those people in those communities, those people on the cashless debit card, about the future of the support services that had been funded through this program. And we do want to provide that individual support to people who may need assistance with processing issues, particularly around moving payments and where it may be taken from. Deputy Speaker, we have listened to many people. We have listened to First Nations community leaders, we have listened to service providers, and very importantly, we have listened to cashless debit card participants in these communities. We have heard them loud and clear. Thousands and thousands of people that have been on this card have made their views incredibly clear to us over a very long period of time. Deputy Speaker, the fact is, as I said early on in my contribution, privatised welfare does not work. And I think nothing highlights that more than the disaster of the cashless debit card. And so many people, in talking with them, what they have told me, what they've told us is the shame and anguish the card brings, and it makes them feel like they are constantly being punished and demonised. Well, the Albanese government has said enough is enough. We are calling time on the cashless debit card. We have listened. We know what people have been through. The fact is there is a better way. And that's why the Prime Minister said removing the card would be absolutely central to our agenda if we are elected to government. And we have moved very decisively to abolish the cashless debit card in the first week of the new parliament. As I said, the minister introduced this on day one of the 47th parliament. And we did that because we have listened to what people have said across the country. We know how harmful this card has been. And Deputy Speaker, it would not have been without the loud voices of people across the country, particularly, as I said, No Cashless Debit Card Australia and the Say No 7, who made their voices so clear and made this happen, and to the Australian people who voted for change, for a number of reasons, and one of those reasons was to get rid of the cashless debit card. And now we're doing that. And we're doing that, all of that, Deputy Speaker, because our government, the Albanese Labor government, believes no one should be left behind at all, and these people had been left behind by the previous government. We are ensuring we are looking out for the most disadvantaged and the most vulnerable in our country, and it's for that reason that I am very privileged to be speaking today on abolishing the cashless debit card, and I commend the bill to the House.
Order. The question is that this bill be now read a second